This is enhanced ACT25MC1, which appears from the 2025-2026 official guide you see in the bottom left of your screen. Math. Cameron took 4 tests and his scores were as follows: 100, 60, 80, and 30. Cameron took another test that was scored X. The mean score of the 5 tests he took is 72. What is the value of X? So of course, to find the mean, you add the items and divide by how many items there were, the 5th being X, to get 72. And if you cross multiply, you're looking at 360, and that's what? 160, 280, 270, which makes the answer 90. In the Venn diagram below, circles S, C, and A represent farms raising sheep, cows, and pigs respectively. How many of the 47 farms represented in the diagram do not raise cows? Do not raise cows is everything entirely outside of the cows circle. So if I were to draw a shape, it would be all of this, right? So that would be the 12 and the 2 and the 5, but nothing that's within the green circle, which should make the answer 19. Marco designs a spinner wheel that has exactly 4 sections: red, blue, green, and yellow. He wants the spinner wheel to have a 25% chance of landing on each section. He spins the wheel 500 times. The results of the spins are shown in the table. Well, it's nowhere near even, right? So if it were actually 25% each out of 500, it would have to be 125 for each of them. So there's no way that it's an accurate representation of realistic equal distribution of chances. Based on the results of this table, which of the following changes would be the best fix? One of the following changes would be the best fix. Which one? Decrease the area of the red section by increasing the area of the blue section. No, it's the other way around, right? That'd be going in the wrong direction. You should increase the area of the red section by decreasing the area of the blue section. Yeah, I see what they're saying. So they're saying that the 130 and the 125 are very, very close to what's theoretically correct, which is 125. But then these two up here, the red and the blue, are way, way off. So if you made the blue smaller and the red bigger, which is B as in boy, it would even it out to equal distribution. In triangle ABC, A and C are congruent, and the measure of B is 143.6. 143.6. So this is a really wide angle, 143.6 degrees. That's B as in boy. And then if A and C are congruent, that means that the corresponding sides, right, the sides across from each of them are also congruent, although I guess you don't need that for this. So it's simply subtracting from 180 and dividing by 2 gives you 18.2 degrees. Which of the following expression is equivalent to? Well, this you could write the distribution one at a time if you weren't sure. So this would be this, which is not the answer, but nets to 7x as its middle term. And then B as in boy would be x squared plus 6x minus 5x minus 30, which is x squared plus x minus 30. So no, it's got to be C as in cat, right? So that's x squared minus 6x plus 5x minus 30 is x squared minus x minus 30. Which of the following matrices is equal to? So some people might not realize this, but you can do this on the TI. If you know how to enter a matrix into the calculator, you can get the TI to do matrix operations for you. Now, to use the replicator on the screen, it takes a minute to type it carefully. But if I edit the dimensions of matrix A to be 2 by 2 and enter the values book style as it's written here. Oh, what did I hit? I meant to hit, -4. So let me use the correct syntax on the screen here. So -4. Yep. No, messed that up. -4. Sorry. edit matrix A to be a 2 by 2, and that's -4, enter. What did I hit wrong? A1 is, oh, I'm sorry, -4. God, I'm doing a terrible job with the negative button. There we go. Sorry about that. 2. Yeah, if you hit the minus button, it doesn't understand what you're referring to. And -5. Okay, so we've entered those values in their specific slots in a 2 by 2 matrix. Now, if you quit out from here back to a blank screen and you hit 5 and then insert matrix A, it does what you want it to do. So once you have this on the screen and you hit enter, it will simply show you the picture, right? Which is the final one. A simpler way of saying it is that scalar multiplication of a matrix is what you think it is. You just quintuple every element, and it is what you would have probably intuitively guessed it is. Although there are other operations with matrices that aren't intuitive. For example, the determinant of a matrix, but that's not this question. Lavon purchased some tickets and snack vouchers for an upcoming event and gave them to the members of her work group. Each member of her work group received the same number of tickets and the same number of snack vouchers. Okay? The total number of tickets she gave to her group was 30, and the total number of snack vouchers was 75. Which of the following could be the number of members in Lavon's group? Well, both of these numbers have to effectively be divisible by the right answer choice. So if it was 10, well, then of course each person would get 3 here, but it wouldn't be an integer here. So it can't be that. So they're effectively asking which answer choice is a factor of both 75 and 30, and the answer is just 15. The initial speed in miles per hour of a certain car that skids to a stop can be estimated by multiplying the length of the skid in feet by 35 and then taking the square root of the product. So I'm going to translate that from words to math, words to an equation. The initial speed can be estimated by, I'm just going to write it literally in words. So multiplying the length of the skid by 35 and then taking the square root of the product. According to this method, what is the estimated initial speed in miles per hour of the car when it makes a 108-foot skid? So I'm going to hit this on the calculator, right? It's simply 108 times 35, and the square root is 61. Oh, I see. You could have used radical reduction to get the answer, although you'd be better off, in the interest of time, just checking the answer choices one at a time. So 61.48, well, it's obviously not the first one. Is that 7 root 105? No. Is that 6 root 105? Yes. Then x equals for this one, well, this is just simple algebra, right? So I'll put the 5x on the right and put the plus 1 on the left, and then divide everything by 5, which you could have written like this. But remember that you break the fraction into its components when you have multiple elements in the numerator. I'm guessing they write it. Oh, no, they just write it like this. Okay, that's all. A boat is traveling at a speed of 30 miles per hour. What is this boat speed in feet per second? So this is going to be a skeleton conversion, right? So 30 miles in 1 hour is where you start. And then feet per second, you have to convert the units twice. So say 5280 feet in 1 mile. Actually, you need 3 of these, right? So then you have to say 1 hour is to 60 minutes, and then 1 minute is to 60 seconds. And the point of writing it in the skeleton pattern is that you know that the units cancel out, and you can see what units the remaining outcome would be in. So miles and miles cancel, hours and hours cancel, minutes and minutes cancel. So you're left with feet on the top and seconds on the bottom. So it's 30 times 5280 over 60 times 60, and it's in feet over seconds. 30 times 5280 divided by 60 divided by 60 is 44 feet per second. An object is launched vertically at 30 meters per second from a 55-meter tall platform. The height h of t in meters of the object t seconds after launch is modeled by that. What will be the height in meters of the object 3 seconds after the launch? Well, that's simply h of 3. Now, the best way to do this may actually be on the TI again. So let's find our TI replicator. So if you go to y equals and you enter the function in general, it will let you use the table to plug in anything that you want. So instead of graphing it, go directly to the table. So hit second graph, and then, change the table settings to 01 ask auto. Works much better so that you can enter your own value. Okay, now go back to the table. It should be empty. And then if you plug in 3, it will tell you the output value. You could have also done it just by writing it out, of course. And that's B. The whole numbers 1 through 30 were each written on separate pieces of paper. Those 30 pieces of paper were put into a jar. One piece of paper will be randomly drawn from this jar. What is the probability that the piece of paper will have a prime number? So you have to know what counts as prime or not. The definition of prime that encompasses every possible exception is integer with exactly 2 distinct factors. Integer with exactly 2 distinct factors. That accounts for the possibly ambiguous cases of 0 and 1 and 2. So just to be crystal clear, 0 is not prime because it could have been 0 times anything, so it has more than 2 distinct factors. 1 is not prime because its factors or its factor, they're not distinct from each other. The smallest prime number is 2. So 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, and 29. So that's 10 out of 30 is J. Let me erase this for clarity's sake. For an angle with measure alpha in a right triangle, sine of alpha is 5/13. So I'm going to say that this is alpha. And sine, so opposite over hypotenuse, is 5/13. And tan of alpha is 5/12. Sure, so opposite over adjacent is 5/12. What is cosine of alpha? Well, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 12/13. Which of the following values, if any, is the y value of the solution set to the system of equations below? Well, these are often set up so that with some very simple manipulation, you can get things to cancel out so that you can solve. It looks like in this case, if you just double the top and then just add, they will cancel out. So if you just add the expressions in place now, you'd be looking at, oh, this is a funky case, right? Because you get 0 plus 0 is 16, which is, of course, never true. So this is effectively a trick question. You could also see that if you switch them both to slope-intercept form, so the top one, if you put the y on the right, becomes this, and then the bottom one is momentarily this, which then becomes this. And this line have no solution. There's no solution to this system of two lines because they're parallel. They're parallel with different y-intercepts, so they never intersect. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to an expansion, so a cubic expansion, right? So a binomial sum cubed Well, it's definitely not D as in dog. You know that there's going to be a term. There's going to be a term of every power of y. Now, if you weren't sure, there's no shame in writing it out. So when you square it, you get this. And then if you think of the remaining y plus 7, you can do the expansion. There'll be 6 terms in this expansion, right? I'm just going to try and write it out quickly. Y cubed plus 14y squared plus 49y plus 7y squared plus 98y plus 343. So that 343 stays at the end there floating. And then the 14 and the 7 makes it 21y squared. And the 98 and the 49 makes what? 147? Yeah. The sum of 3 positive integers is 180, and the ratio of the integers is 5 to 3 to 2. Well, if the ratio is 5 to 3 to 2, you could have thought of the 3 respectively as 5x, 3x, and 2x. And then if you think of those adding to 180, then you're looking at, oh, why did I write y? Then you're looking at 5x plus 3x plus 2x is 10x is 180. So x is 18, which means the actual values are 90, 54, and 36. What's the value of the smallest? Yeah, it's 36. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to that? Well, this is just distribution, right? Being sure to distribute the minus sign across what's in the parentheses on the right. So x squared minus y squared minus 6x squared minus 4xy plus y squared. So this y squared and this y squared cancel to nothing. And you're looking at negative 5x squared minus 4xy is A. Given I equals the square root of negative 1, what is root 9 plus root of negative 16? So obviously the root 9 is just a 3. Now the root of negative 16, if you did it by radical reduction, you could have thought of it as the root of 16 times negative 1. And then in this situation, that's the same as root 16 times root negative 1. So this becomes 4 times I. So the answer is 3 plus 4i. The first 5 terms of an arithmetic sequence are 7, 21, 35, 49, and 63. Let t sub n represent the nth term of the sequence. What is the value of t sub 25? So the definition of an arithmetic sequence is when the gap between consecutive terms is constant. In this case, the gap is 14. Now, a lot of people tend to miss it by 1. So if you're standing on the first term, in order to get to the 25th term, you go up 24 steps. So the amount by which you move up is 24 steps of 14. 24 times 14 is 336. So it's where you started plus 336, which is 343. At a certain time of day, a flagpole casts a shadow. Flagpole casts a 9-foot-long shadow, and a nearby 4-foot-tall fence post casts a 2.4-foot-long shadow. So I think this creates similar triangles, right? You can think of it as a triangle within a triangle. So if this is the tall flagpole and this is a right angle, that casts the tall flagpole casts a 9-foot shadow, and a 4-foot tall fence post casts a 2.4 foot long shadow. So it's about proportionality of triangles, right? The small triangle, the 2.4 and the 4 triangle, is proportional to the big entire triangle. And the proportion would have been 4 is to 2.4, as this height here is to 9, right? The corresponding sides of the similar triangle. So 2.4h is 36, which makes h 15. In rectangle ABCD shown, segments BE and CE partition the rectangle into 3 triangles. Given DE is 7, BE is 26, and CE is 25, what is the length in centimeters of BC? Well, these create Pythagorean right triangles, right? So, in fact, they're Pythagorean triples. So DC, which is technically lowercase e being across from capital E. So 7 squared plus e squared is 25 squared. It's a Pythagorean triple. E comes out to 24. And then this would be a 7. And then a 24 and a blank and a 26. So the 26 is the hypotenuse. I'm going to call this by a different letter just for clarity's sake. I'm going to call this lowercase f. So then it would have been 24 squared plus f squared equals 26 squared. And you can hit that on the calculator and you will get that f as in Frank is 10. And then this 10 and 7 makes 17. In a particular cleaning solution, the ratio of concentrated solution to water is 3 to 40. Concentrated solution to water is 3 to 40. How many cups of concentrated solution should be added to 5 gallons of water? So the 5 is the water that goes on the bottom, and this is the unknown. And you simply solve by cross multiplying, which gives you 15/40, which is 3/8. But it's in a different unit. That's really, really tricky. So it's a 3/8 gallons. And then a gallon is 4 quarts. And a quart is 4 cups. So to go from gallons to cups, you'd multiply by 4 twice, as multiplying by 16. So it's actually 3/8 times 16 is 6 cups. That's a tricky question, and I foolishly ignored this until I saw it right at the end there, is G. Let f of t equal that. Which of the following numbers is closest to the value of f of 5? Well, this is simply plugging in 5 as t is in Thomas, but you have to understand how to use parentheses correctly. So it's e to the 15th, which I'm going to hit first. So e to the 15th times 7 plus 1 gives me a huge number. I'm looking at 22883122. Oh, and I see they have it in scientific. 22883122 in scientific. Well, it has to just be C as in cat, but you can say why it's C as in cat. So 2.0 times 10 to the 7 is shifting the decimal spot 7 times. So from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 gets you to this number. Which of the following expresses 40 degrees in radians? I think the best way to write this is always degrees out of degrees that make up a whole circle is radians out of radians that make up a whole circle. So remember that there are 2 pi radians that constitute an entire circle. And then when you do it this way, you can always just cross multiply to solve. You don't have to have remembered any formula for how to do this. And then x itself is this, which reduces, I'm going to reduce just step at a time, gets you to this, to this, to this. Let the function f be defined as f of x equals negative 9x squared. In the standard xy coordinate plane, the graph of y equals f of x undergoes a transformation such that the result is the graph of y equals f of x minus 4. Under the transformation, the graph of f of x is, well, this is what you think it is, but it's simply shifted down 4. But if you weren't sure, you can use the TI to give you a really good answer to this, actually. So you can say, let me copy this carefully. You can say it is the opposite of 9x squared. And then in y2, you can actually insert the variable y1 if I go to vars and yvars and function and y1. A lot of people have never done that. It's really cool. You can reference another function within a function. And then when I graph both of these, you should see the original and then the one that's been shifted down 4. Oh, sorry. Trying to be consistent with my blue. For all positive values a, b, c, and d, when that is true, which of the following expression is equal to b as in boy? This is just rearranging algebraically. So I'll start by putting the c on the other side, and then I'm going to next divide by the quantity 1/2 a. So dividing by 1/2 a, or dividing by a over 2, is the same as multiplying by 2 over a. So you could have jumped to here, which means that b is plus or minus the square root of this entity, which is G as in girl. On a trip, two sisters counted 1,430 vehicles. They divided the vehicles into categories, cars, trucks, and other. They noted the color of each as white, black, red, or other, as shown in the table. What is the probability that a randomly selected truck is black? The probability that a randomly selected truck is black is the same as saying, given that something is a truck, what are the chances that it's black? So only the trucks apply. You're only talking about this. And the answer would just be the black trucks out of the total trucks. A regular hexagon is inscribed in a circle with diameter 18 inches as shown. What is the perimeter in inches of the hexagon? So I just remember from experience, having done a million of these classic geometry questions, when you break up a regular hexagon as such, it breaks up into 6 equilateral triangles. You can show why, because each of these would be 60. Each of the central angle measurements would be 60. And then since this and this are both radii, then this angle is equal to that angle. And if this is a 60, then those are also both 60s. So it breaks into equilateral triangles. And then, of course, 18 is diameter. So every equilateral is a 9 and a 9 and a 9. And then the perimeter of the hexagon is simply 9 times 6. Tiny earns $34,000 in her first year at her job. She is given a raise of the same dollar amount each year, resulting in her earning $38,080 in the 4th year. So this is an arithmetic sequence, right? Because you increase by the same numerical amount every year. Now, if you're standing on term 1, so you're standing on this year, to get to this year, you move up 3 years. So you could have said that 34,000 plus 3 steps gets you 38,080. So 3 steps equals 4,080, which makes each step worth 1,360. And then you can assign values here, right? So that would be That would be 35,360. And this would be 36,720. What is the total of Tanya's earnings during her 4 years? It's simply the sum of those four numbers, which I'm going to just very carefully hit on the calculator. Is 144,160. In the standard XY coordinate plane, how many points are both 5 coordinate units from the origin and also 2 coordinate units from the line y equals 0? So 5 coordinate units from the origin is a circle of radius 5 around the origin, whose equation would be x squared plus y squared equals 25. Now y equals 0 is the x-axis, right? Is the horizontal axis. 2 units away from there could either be the line this or this, right? As in the line y equals 2 or the line y equals -2. And then the number of points of intersection is actually 4, right? This, and this. In triangle ABC, if the measure of A is less than the measure of B, and the measure of B is less than the measure of C, I'm going to do this numerically. So just suppose it was, I don't know, 59 being less than 60, and 60 being less than 61. The principle at play here is that the longest side is across from the widest angle. So lowercase c, which is also the same as capital AB, is the longest side. So in order, it seems like it has to be this one. And then the shortest side is BC, yeah, which is this. Lejeune sells exactly 4 kinds of pies in his bakery: apple, pecan, coconut cream, and peach. Of the pies he sold on Thursday, a quarter were apple, half were pecan, 24 were coconut cream, and 8 were peach. Yeah, but those have to add up to the total. So a quarter of the total, so a quarter x plus a half x plus 24 plus 8 is x, is the total. A quarter and a half makes 3/4 plus 32 being the total, which leaves you with 32 being a quarter of x. So x is 128. In a certain quadrilateral, 2 opposite angles each measure that. The other 2 opposite angles each measure that. It looks like that makes a parallelogram, right? So 3x plus 5, 3x plus 5, x plus 3, x plus 3. Well, you could have said that all 4 of these add up to 360, or perhaps more simply, you could say that this and this together makes a right angle. I know my picture isn't perfect, but it's a parallelogram, so this being parallel to this. So I'm just going to say 3x plus 5 plus x plus 3 is 180, which is this, and then this, and this. The first 4 terms of a sequence are shown in the table. The sequence is defined by a sub 1 equals 2 and a sub n equals a sub n minus 1 plus the quantity n minus 1 squared for n is greater than or equal to 2. This notation confuses a lot of people, but you could have said it out loud as any term is the previous term plus the subscript minus 1 squared. It's confusing, right? So for example, now you can't skip forward in a recursively defined sequence, which is what this is. This is a recursive sequence, or recursively defined, as in it recurs. It keeps happening again and again. You can't jump to the 6th one. So the fifth, I'm going to write this here. A sub 5 is A sub 5 minus 1 plus the number 5 minus 1 squared. So as in term 4, which is 16, plus this squared, which is itself 16, gives you a 32. Then you have to loop again. So A sub 6 is A sub 5 plus this, which is itself 32 plus 25 is 57. On the real number line, how many integers are between? How many integers are between? So negative 65 divided by 6 is negative 10.83. And then 75 divided by 2 is 37.5. Now, a lot of people tend to make the same mistake on this, I'm guessing. So the first integer that's to the right of this is negative 10. So it's negative 10, and then obviously the first one to the left of this is 37. So there are 37 positives and 10 negatives, but then there's also 0. So it's 10 plus 1 plus 37 is 48. I was expecting there to be an answer choice where people forgot about 0 itself, but in this case there's not, so it's just C. During a particular experiment, two events A and B can each occur. Events A and B are mutually exclusive during this experiment. Which of the following probabilities is 0? Well, this is about the definition of probability notation. So are mutually exclusive, as in they cannot happen at the same time. So by definition, cannot happen at the same time means that both of them happening is an impossibility, which is that this happens and that both happens at the same time is impossible, which is just this. The polynomial function defined by that has x minus 3 as one of its linear factors. What are all and only the zeros of it? Could have done this by polynomial long division. In fact, that's probably the way I'd recommend to prove what's going on here. Although it may have been a while since people did this. So polynomial long division. X goes into x cubed, x squared, and then this becomes x cubed minus 3x squared. And then if you subtract, you actually get 4x squared here. And then you divide up. So then you're looking at minus 4x, and then multiply down. Should have recopied this, which gives you negative 4x squared plus 12x. And then add is 4x, bring down the negative 12. Now divide up. Plus 4 gives you 4x minus 12, so it comes out with no remainder. So now you know it's x minus 3 times x squared minus 4x plus 4. But the trinomial here is itself the square of a binomial sum, right? So this is actually x minus 2 all squared, which means the zeros, right? The solutions are 3 and 2, which is D as in dog. Jonathan rode his bike every day for 18 days. The table shows each of the distances he rode. The table also shows the number of days he rode each of those distances. What is the median? The median daily distance. The median of 18 things, the median of 18 things is the average of the 9th and the 10th. Right? When you have an even number of items, the median of those items is the mean of the two middle items. So you could either count 9 up from the bottom or 9 down from the top. So 2 and 4 make 6, 7, 8, 9. So the 9th item is in here, but the 10th item is in here. So the 9th item is a 3, and the 10th item is a 6. So this is this, which is this. A tourism organization randomly selects 100 students finishing their summer visit to Spain. The organization asks them how many cities they had toured in the country. The table shows the results. Based on these data, for the population of tourists that visited Spain during the summer, what is the best estimate of the mean number of cities toured? The mean. Well, it's actually very similar to the one right above, right? So there are 10 people who visited 1, which means those add up to 10. 40 people who visited 2 each, so those add up to 80. And then 50 people who visited 3 each, which those add up to 150. So 10 and 80 is 90, plus 150 is 240. So it's 240, I guess I'm going to say, cities visited. And then the number of people is 100, which makes the answer 2.4. Given that the equation, the fourth root of x is y, where y is a real number, what must be true of x? The fourth root of x is y. So your instinct is to take both sides to the fourth power, which gives you that x is y to the fourth. So what must be true of x? It is an even real number. I don't think so, right? But let's try and come up with cases that disprove this, right? So for example, if y was 5, then x would be 5 to the fourth power, which is 625. So y definitely does not have to be an even real number. It is a rational number. Well, you have to understand what's irrational. I'm going to use pi as the irrational. So if y itself was pi, which is irrational, then x would be pi to the fourth. So you'd be looking at pi to the fourth is what you get, which is also irrational. So it does not have to be rational. It just has to be the fourth power of something. Does it have to be an integer? No, definitely not. You could have y be, I don't know, 1.79. Then obviously its fourth power is not an integer. It seems like it's a non-negative real number. Yes, of course, because anything to an even power has to be non-negative. And by non-negative, they mean 0 or positive. So it could be that 0 to the fourth is 0, but that still counts as non-negative. Or it could be like 11 to the fourth, which comes out to whatever it is, which is non-negative, right? That must be positive. That's a tricky question that I just sort of recommend talking out and through just by example, by plugging in your own numbers. Given that m is greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 4, n is greater than or equal to 4 and less than or equal to 6, and p is greater than or equal to 8, less than or equal to 10, what is the greatest possible value of that fraction times that fraction? So let's go piece at a time. If you wanted the quotient m over n to be as big as possible, you would want the numerator to be large, which is a 4, and the denominator to be small, which is a 4. Okay? And then similarly for the right-hand fraction, well, if you want a fraction to be as big as possible, you would want the denominator to be as small as possible, which means you would pick 8 as p, and you'd get 1 times an eighth is an eighth. Which following data set has the largest standard deviation? So you don't have to know the definition of standard deviation. There is a complex definition in statistics, but you don't need to know that formula. You just need to know the basic idea. I always tell people that standard deviation is how spread out are the data. So the thing with the lowest possible standard deviation is when they're just all the same number. So J is the opposite. J has the lowest standard deviation. So in which set, if you were to graph it, are the items most spread out? Well, the answer is F, but you can show graphically. So in F, you have 2 zeros and 2 10s. And I'm sort of writing the 10s right next to each other, even though I know they're on top of each other. That's more spread out. So this is the answer. Let me try and color code. So G as in girl would be 0, 1, 9, 10. But it's not spread out quite as far. And then H as in Henry would be 2, 3, 5, 7. Not as spread out. Michael has a cylindrical fish tank shown that has an inside diameter of 18 inches. When he put colored gravel in his fish tank, the water level of the tank rose 2 inches. What is the volume of the gravel in cubic inches? So it's basically a cylinder within a cylinder. It's the volume of just this. The volume of a cylinder is just the circle times how tall it is. So the circle has a radius of 9, so it's pi times 9 squared. And then its height just is a 2. So that's 81 pi times 2 is 162 pi. The table gives values of f of x, g of x, and h of x for all positive integers x is less than or equal to 5. Given h of f of g of a equals 1, where a is a positive integer less than or equal to 5, what is the value of a? So this is a triple nested function. I'm going to work my way out. I guess you could say work your way in from the outside. So h of something is 1. So what is the input that gives you 1 as the output? Well, that's determined by this, right? So that's saying that h of 2 equals 1. So 2 is this, right? So now you're saying that f of g of a is 2. Okay, so f of something is 2. What is the something? Well, that's determined by this, right? That's saying f of 1 equals 2. So 1 is this, right? So now g of a equals 1. So what do you put into g to get 1 as the output? Well, that's this, right? Or should I say it's this and this? That's g of 5 equals 1. And a is 5. Each time coin C is tossed, it lands face up or face down. The probability of landing face up is 3 times the probability of landing face down. In a certain game, the player wins $1 when coin C lands face up, and the player wins $2 when coin C lands face down. To the nearest cent, what is the expected value of each toss of coin C in this game? Well, a lot of people would get tripped up by this. So landing face up is 3 times landing face down. That means that face up is 3/4, right? Face up is 3/4 probability, and face down is 1/4. Okay, then you get $1 for face up. So it's 3/4 times $1. And you get $2 for face down, which is this, which is 3/4 plus 1/2 is 5/4, which is $1.25.